Welcome back to SportZEdge. It may not be the way he planned it, but Pete Tucci has finally made it to the major leagues. Just not as a player. He's a bat maker. That's right, from swinging a bat to making them in his garage, and now the CEO of Tucci Lumber, making bats for some big names in the big leagues. Pete Tucci grew up playing baseball in Norwalk. He was drafted and made it to the highest level of the minor leagues. But when he was released in 2002, he had to find a real job, and that began his long road back to baseball.
It really took me a long time to get over.
After getting out of baseball, Tucci worked in the heating and air conditioning business for a few years, but then his wife suggested he try something new.
So actually my wife came to me in '09 and said, "You ever thought about getting back into baseball somehow?" And my answer to her was, I really have no time. But, I don't have time to coach, I don't have time to do lessons. What way would you think I have time to get back into baseball? She said, "You ever thought about making bats?" And it kind of started out as a hobby. That's all it really was meant to be.
After going to a woodshop class and looking at some videos online, Tucci's wife bought him a lathe, and he made his first bat in his garage.
I turned my first bat, and it actually came out pretty good. It came out like I would think a bat should come out. I showed it to a few people, and all of a sudden people started saying, "Can you make me one?" And sure. So we started making a few more.
That hobby has now turned into a big business. The Tucci Lumber Company makes bats for more than 130 Major League Baseball players, including Colorado Rockies slugger Troy Tulowitzki.
That is way up there and gone for Tulowitzki.
So this is our manufacturing shop. Yeah, this is where we're making all our product.
Tucci recently moved his operation into this 10,000 square foot space in Norwalk. They make about 120 bats a day. So this is what a bat looks like before we see a bat.
So this is called a billet.
Yep.
And this is, when we're getting the wood from our mills, this is the state that it comes in. We use ash and maple, maple being the most predominant. We probably do about 80% maple to about 20% ash.
The billets are then put in a lathe, and after Tucci enters the specs into a computer, a billet becomes a bat. A little sanding, some new paint, and then off to the laser engraver for the model and player's name, and the job is done.
What drew me really to the business when I first started was the actual art of doing it. It was just fun sitting there and making something by hand. And then when I decided to make a business out of it and try to make a livelihood out of it, obviously it wasn't really conducive to that. 8 bats a day wasn't really going to cut it. I say this all the time. I don't know how other companies make bats. Everything we've done has just been pretty much self-taught.
Tucci Lumber is just one of many new boutique bat makers across the country. After a couple of years of making bats, Tucci still wasn't sure if he was going to make it.
Even after we got our first order, Gabby Sanchez was on the Marlins at the time, and he was our first major league guy to kind of use our bats and say, "Man, I like these, I'm going to order them." That was our first real, okay, phew, I could kind of exhale at that point, okay, it's not just me who thinks, these are good.
Life really has come full circle for Tucci. After spending most of his life playing baseball, he's back in the big leagues.
It kind of goes hand in hand with that whole competitive kind of attitude that I had towards baseball. It's the same thing with this. It's competition. And it's basically a game, and I'm just trying to play it as long as I can.
Tucci was at the All-Star game this week. He had to catch up with some of his clients. Tucci also makes bats for players on the Bridgeport Blue.